Hello and welcome to this episode of Spark Coaching, Create the Life That You Want. I'm your host, Wasim. This is the first episode of the podcast, but this has been going on for an extended amount of time on YouTube. I've just switched over to the podcast format because I thought it might work better. So let's jump into it. Comparison is the thief of joy. You often heard that, but let's have a little think about that and try to understand why it is that we compare ourselves and why are we so obsessed with comparing ourselves with others, and also why it's such a bad thing. Like the expression says, comparison is the thief of joy. So let's say you're sitting there, got a bit of time free, and you decide to scroll some social media. Let's say you're scrolling through Instagram and you see a lot of people on Instagram doing amazingly well. This person's super fit, this person's got a six-pack, this person's got a business that's doing really well. This person's showing how they've just been traveling around the world for the past 2 years. And suddenly, you feel smaller. You feel like, oh, I'm by that age, or I'm older than these people. I've had the same opportunities, but my life is nothing like that. And this episode is all about comparison and how, like the saying says, it is the thief of joy. We'll have a look at why we compare, why it was a very useful thing for us, and why it's not so useful now. So our ancestors lived in small tribes. Even when they were getting slightly larger, even up to 100 people, they were still relatively small compared to the amount of people we surround ourselves with now. We'll go into that a little bit more because it's not just our city now that we surround ourselves with, but we'll come back to that. So our ancestors lived in these small tribes, and it was useful in these small tribes to compare ourselves with other people. If you compared yourself with other people, you were able to understand your rank. And if you understood your rank, your position in that society, you knew your risks and you knew your chances. It was all very clear. If you wanted to move up in that rank, comparison helped you. You understood how it was possible to move up. If you moved down, you understood the reasons why you moved down and you were able to adjust yourself, your behavior. There is something called Dunbar's number. This is a bit of research that shows that the human brain can really only handle about 150 stable relationships. Essentially, like I said, a small village, small tribe of people. So what that tells us is that our brain is geared to handle 150 people at most, our relationships with 150 people. If we live in a society where 150 people is all we know, because that's pretty much what it was like in a lot of our history, a large portion of our history. We lived in a society where 150 people maximum that you knew, probably less. Maximum 150 people. And we were able to use comparison, because our brains are wired for comparison, to understand our position, like I said, to help us understand our risks, help us understand our chances within that life. But now we find ourselves in an interesting position, because we find ourselves not only comparing ourselves to our surrounding people. So let's say you live in London and you have quite a large amount of people that you're comparing yourself with. You're now also comparing yourself to the millions and millions of people online. Literally millions of people online, and you're comparing yourselves to them. And we will go into a bit more about what it is you're comparing, because you're not comparing your life directly with their life. You're comparing your life with their highlight reel, but we'll have a look at that in a minute. But essentially, you're comparing yourself to millions of people online, and that's going to feel overwhelming. That has to feel overwhelming because it's so much more than the 150 people that we're geared to understand. And we had a purpose for comparison within that 150 people. What is our purpose for comparing ourselves to 150? Well, it's the same purpose, and that's where things trip us up, because we're using a tool, comparison, that we used for a small number of people, and now we're applying that same tool to millions of people. And this tool is not a scalable tool. So just going into the reasons why we compare and how we're sort of wired to compare. Well, research has shown that comparison lights up the reward parts of the brain. So the ventral striatum and the anterior cingulate cortex. These both light up when you are in the process of comparing. So you feel that reward in that moment when you're comparing yourself to people and you're feeling good. And if it's a positive comparison, let's look at that first of all. If it's a positive comparison, as in you feel like you're doing better than the person you're watching, comparison will light up those reward parts of the brain, the ventral striatum and the anterior cingulate cortex. So it feels rewarding. It's like a sugar rush. But as soon as you finish, like a sugar rush, you will crash afterwards. And that's why comparison and scrolling through the internet, Instagram, Facebook and so on, it's very addictive because you get a reward, but like a sugar rush, it's a very short-lived reward. And then you're back and you're down, and you're feeling worse and you want to go back. Again, you get the high. Next time you spend a bit more time. Next thing you know, you're scrolling 4 to 8 hours a day. It sounds like an incredible amount of time, but it's so easy. And I've been there, so easy to hit 8 hours a day on your phone, looking at various things on your phone. That's constant comparison of yourself to others repeatedly. And again, it's like a fix. And this is not what we were originally designed to do. Less than 150 people, and comparison, there wasn't that much you could compare, right? With 150 people, especially let's say a lower number around you, you were probably fixating on a handful of people that you were really comparing yourself with. And now you're comparing yourself to loads of people. Let's say it's a positive comparison. Let's say in terms of comparison, you are doing, or you feel you're doing amazingly well. It's still a dopamine hit. It's still that hit to your reward part of your brain, giving you that sugar rush and then giving you that crash afterwards. And you can just easily spend all your day doing it, just like an opium addict could spend all their day just in an opium haze of some sort. These likes, these follows, and these comments will just give you those tiny dopamine hits. I got into a phase at one point where I would wake up and check my phone and look at my LinkedIn profile. That was my drug of choice. Looked at my LinkedIn profile and see that I'd gotten 15 likes for a post. And I'd be like, wow, this is really good. Or someone has replied to my post in a positive way. I'd be like, wow, this is great. And I would do that first thing in the morning. And you've got, this is one of those things you've got to watch out for, because what you do first thing in the morning is often an indicator of where your addiction lies. If you wake up first thing in the morning and, I don't know, start looking through eBay for a bargain, or if you wake up in the morning and start looking at clothes shop online, or if you look at Instagram first thing in the morning, the thing that you do first thing in the morning is often an indicator of your addiction. So a lot of people who are very addicted to smoking, first thing they do when they wake up is have a cigarette. And that's the start of the day. Or less damaging than a cigarette, maybe coffee. Yeah, first thing a lot of people do is wake up and they have to have their coffee. And I've got to have my coffee first thing in the morning. Don't talk to me before I have my coffee first thing in the morning. A lot of people are addicted and very proud to be addicted to the coffee just because it's an accepted drug of choice, and they're willing to change their behavior based on that coffee. This is a bit of a slight tangent on this, but you control your own behavior. And if you convince yourself that without coffee, you're going to be bad-tempered and ill-tempered and unhappy with things and not be able to talk to people, then that's what will happen. Your mind will convince you that that's what you need. You need that coffee hit before you can become a social person. A lot of people do. I used to do that with sleep. I used to think, I've got to sleep for exactly 8 hours, or I'm going to sleep for between 8 hours and 8 hours and a half, because I felt like under 8 hours is too little and over 8 hours is too much. So I set that limit as 8.5 hours, because if you sleep too much, I felt you'd feel just as bad as you sleep too little. And I'd convinced myself of this, so much so that if I underslept, even if it was sort of 10 minutes undersleeping, I woke up after 7 hours 50 minutes. I had an Apple Watch at the time and I'd time my sleep. If I woke up 10 minutes earlier than I wanted to, I would feel terrible for the entire day. I'd feel horrendous. I'd feel like, if only I'd gotten those 8 hours sleep, I would feel so much better. I realized that actually I was just convincing myself of that. So then I convinced myself that actually it doesn't matter how many hours sleep I get. My body will ensure that I get the quality sleep in the time I've given it, and I'll wake up feeling refreshed. And amazingly, I woke up feeling refreshed. So I was able to convince myself that I didn't need that sleep. It turns out I did not need that sleep. Do I feel better after a good amount of rest? Yes. What is a good amount of rest? Well, my body decides what is a good amount of rest. If I'm getting 7 hours sleep and I wake up, that's great. I'm feeling refreshed. My body is feeling refreshed. If I get 9 hours sleep, fine, I feel refreshed. If I get 5 hours sleep and I wake up, I'm good to go, because I know I've convinced myself in that way that I'm good to go. Alright, so going back to what I was just talking about. So I convinced myself about sleep, and some people convince themselves about coffee, but it's all just going back to what I was talking about in terms of an addiction. Okay, so if you wake up in the morning and you just have to have a look at your Instagram, that's an addiction there. That's an indicator to you of the addiction. And like I said, it just gives you that sugar rush, those little dopamine hits, your likes. Your brain is essentially treating social media like a slot machine. You pull the lever and you keep checking, and just like the best addiction machines, They don't give you a reward every time. There's a bit of research done around this in places like casinos and so on. The best way to get someone addicted is not to give them a reward every time. And it's not to give them a reward on a consistent basis. It's to give them a reward in an inconsistent basis. And that triggers something in the mind. And that's why you come back to social media, you refresh the page, and every so often you get a like. And that's your pull of the lever. That's why you keep checking. Even if it makes you feel worse when there's no likes, you keep checking because that's what the brain is wired to do. And this is even worse in young people, in teenagers. The brain's reward hub, the nucleus accumbens, that is really hyperactive at a younger age. They're really hardwired to crave approval. And again, there's going to be a reason for this genetically. Teens are going to be looking for approval, and you'll have noticed this yourself if you have children or you have nephews and nieces and so on. You know that they are often asking you for approval in different ways, and maybe not directly, maybe indirectly, but they're always asking for approval in some way. And this is why teenagers get addicted online so much more quickly and easily than adults. Fortunately, some of us who are older will have gotten through a time when there were no phones and there was no internet. But teenagers growing up in the last decade, probably slightly longer than that, have grown up with phones and have grown up with that massive addiction. And that comes through with the increase in various things. We'll go into this a bit more, but the increase in things like depression and how it's linked to social media. All right, that's just talking a bit about comparison, and we look there slightly a bit more about the positive comparison, how comparison will light up parts of the brain and so on. So let's have a look at how comparison can potentially make us unhappy. Because while having constant dopamine hits is a massive time sink, we'll spend a lot of time on there, and we have that sugar rush type feeling, again, massive time sink. And also that sugar rush type feeling, again, it's going to make us look at Instagram over and over again, or social media over and over again. But how does it make us unhappy? Okay, let's have a look at this. Firstly, there's always, in a world that's larger than your typical village of 150 people, there's always going to be someone in the world full of billions of people, someone who's going to be richer than you, fitter than you, younger than you, or more successful than you. You could be the richest person alive in the world. I don't know if that's Jeff Bezos. And you could look on social media and you could find someone who is a young, fit person, and you'd be jealous. You might think, no. Why would Jeff Bezos be jealous of a young, fit person? Let's imagine that you're 40 now, and you spend the next 20 years building your dreams, and you make your dreams come true. You've spent 20 years building them. You've amassed a good fortune, good relationships, whatever your dream is. You've managed to get to where you are. Now you're 60, and you're at the position where you wanted to be right now when you're 40, right? And you find a magic lamp, and the genie says, I can give you one wish. I can either make you even richer, I can return you to age 40 and put you back in that same situation. Now think about it. How many of you would jump at that choice? Jump to be in a position you are now with the resources and the money and the relationships that you have now, or be 20 years older and have everything that you wanted? I think the majority of us would go back to being 40 and appreciating more what we have now. So that's a nice little thought experiment you can do. Just going back to why comparison makes us unhappy. So you can go online and you can have a look at Instagram holiday photos, and you think, wow, these people were on the beach in Mallorca. And what was I doing? I was fixing my car in the cold. You can have a look at people posting about their promotions on LinkedIn. This is probably my particular dissatisfaction when I was addicted to LinkedIn, comparing myself to other people. There's a regular influx of people saying that they've achieved a new job. Again, if you're looking for a new job yourself, it feels like failure. You can have a look online and you can see people who are incredibly fit. And again, you feel dissatisfied with yourself. Even if you are perfectly fine, you feel dissatisfied. We don't measure our worth in isolation. We can't measure our worth in isolation. It's just not how we do things. We have to have a relative comparison. Like I said, going back to 150 people max, that was fine. Now we have millions of people to compare with, and we have to compare our worth with other people. You can't compare how rich you are in isolation. You can't compare your value to others in isolation. You have to look around. It's just unfortunate now looking around means looking at billions of people. We measure it by looking at other people. So you're then comparing yourself to all these amazing people on social media. But looking at that a bit more deeply, what makes them amazing? Well, what makes them amazing is that you are seeing a very curated timeline. You're seeing exactly what they want to present of their life. You're not seeing everything. You're not seeing the bits where they are unhappy, the bits where things don't go to plan. You're seeing everything go to plan. You're seeing them on holiday. You don't see them maybe working for 12-hour days for 6 months or a year to be able to go on holiday. You see them on holiday. And because there's so many people doing so many different things, it just looks like everyone's doing it. But you don't see what's happening behind them. So not only are you judging yourself to millions of people, you are then judging the gritty details of your life to the nice highlight reel of somebody else's life. And that, as I hope you can understand, will just slowly chisel away at your self-worth. And once you lose your self-worth, it's so easy to fall into depression, so easy to fall into that negative space. You compare yourself across different aspects. Sure, you make a lot of money, but you look online and people are making double. Sure, you look great in your photos, but you look online and people are looking amazing. Sure, you just got a new promotion, but this person has been promoted 3 times in the last year. That nothing you do is ever good enough, because you can just compare yourself to different people. You compare yourself against one person in terms of money, someone else in terms of looks, someone else in terms of career, and all comparing yourself to this very curated highlight reel that they've created. So slowly, every aspect of you starts to get chiseled away until you're left feeling like, it's just all rubbish, isn't it? And that's where that depression creeps in. Just talking about it sounds depressing. So let's get back on track. Let's pull ourselves out of this. Okay, so what can you do to actually pull yourselves out of this? So let's go through a few things you can do. All right. First thing you can do is something called an awareness audit. This is where you simply track when you compare and where you compare. It's just highlighting it, bringing it out, because often a lot of these things are so ingrained into our day-to-day routine that we don't understand when it is that we're doing this. For myself, when I'm waiting for the coffee machine to be ready, that's a key time when I just get my phone out and start looking at social media. Yeah, so that's what I'd write down, but that's not something I would really think about. That's just spare space. So you create an awareness audit, and this can be just a simple. You can just use your notepad on your phone if you wanted to. You can make a printout of a sheet if you wanted to, but you just track when and where you compare. So for me, I'd write down next to coffee machine, Instagram. You might use your phone on the toilet. You might put that down, but you just put down these times when because I don't think a lot of people go out of their way to sit down at a computer and think, right, for the next hour I'm going to just look at social media. No, you're probably just on your phone and just look at it every so often. So first of all, the first step is just to bring that comparison out, and with that awareness audit you can then really highlight to yourself all the different times in a day that you do this, and that itself might help you understand actually that's not where you should be spending your time, or what you could be spending that time doing instead, and just brings that awareness. The next thing, because social media is there, we're going to look at it, and there's nothing wrong with looking at social media. It's not like we should never look at social media, because there's a lot of things that are good about social media, keeping tracks of what friends are up to and keeping aware of what's going on in the current time. So there are some things that social media is useful for. So we're not talking about cutting it out altogether, because whenever you have an addiction and whenever you try to cut it out altogether, that's going to be incredibly difficult. What you want to do is you want to reduce the amount of time, and you want to understand and divert what's happening to your brain. And what do I mean by that? Well, one example is you might reframe your thinking around social media. So when you look at something online and you see someone with an incredible physique and you think, wow, I don't look as good as that. Okay? And you think, they're so much better than me. Right? So let's reframe that. You see someone with an incredible physique and you think, okay, they're showing me what is possible here. What is possible to look like. And that might increase your motivation to go to the gym. Or you see someone going on holiday and you think, I wish I could be on holiday. Well, you could be on holiday, right? Maybe that's going to inspire you to put more effort into your job, more effort into a side hustle. So don't compare yourself and think that they're better than me. Reframe it. Think that they're showing me what's possible. This is possible. That's possible. All these things are possible because these are people who have done it. And linked to that, you might want to think about ways in which you inspire other people. And we don't often think about this, but you're in a position now that other people dream to be in, guaranteed. Out there in the millions and millions and billions of people out there in the earth, someone out there, more than one person, loads of people out there would kill to be in your shoes. This is their dream. You've reached their dream. In fact, you've reached your own dreams, right? If you've achieved some of your goals. So this is where gratitude comes in, just writing down daily things that you're grateful for. Because there's loads of things that you've achieved. You've just assimilated and moved on, and you don't get a dopamine hit from them anymore. But just bring them back. You've achieved loads. Be grateful for those things. And again, that's a counter to the negatives of social media. Because you have achieved so much. You might not think about it on a daily basis, but you have. Write them down. What is it that you've achieved, no matter how small? And if you carry on writing these down, you'll build up a journal of things that you are grateful for. And that will also help you track everything that you've achieved. So rather than compare yourself to some random person online, you compare yourself to yourself. You say, well, am I better than last year? All right. What have I done? You got your list of things that you're grateful for. Am I better than I was last year? That's the only comparison you should make. And that's a totally valid comparison. Another thing that I found is that some people think that comparison makes you competitive, that you should be looking at other people because it drives you to achieve more. And on the face of it, yeah, that sounds reasonable. You see someone and you feel inadequate, and that inadequacy drives you. That is a very negative drive. It's sort of like the carrot and the stick approach. The stick will drive the donkey, but it's going to be painful. The carrot will drive the donkey in the same way. It's going to be a lot less painful. So comparing yourself to others, making yourself feel inadequate, it's like the stick. It will improve you. You will get better because you'll be so depressed at how horrible your life is. Or you could compare yourself to how you were last year. And you could free all that energy that you have, all that negative energy that you might build up instead. You could free that and use that energy for real growth. And that's the carrot approach, where you feel better and you're using that energy to carry on going. And you'll feel more joy of experiencing improvements that you've had from your older self than you ever would have from comparison to other people. The level of joy you get from comparing yourself to how you were last year, so much more than any kind of joy when you compare against other people, millions and millions of strangers. Alright, so I'm going to leave it there. I hope you enjoyed listening to that, and I hope this helps you reduce your social media usage. Like I said, you don't have to stop it altogether. That's not a solution because it's there. It's always going to be there. The better solution is to moderate the use of it and also to change its message into a positive message. Let's go back to what I said about my need to sleep exactly 8 hours. I convinced myself of that need, and I was able to unpick that and convince myself that actually my body would decide how long I needed to sleep and I would feel refreshed either way. In the same way, you need to unpick your understanding of social media and how it affects you, and you need to change the message that social media gives you. Because just like sleep, I think we all need social media. It's just so prevalent in our lives. It's not going away. It's there in one format or another. MySpace finished, Facebook started, Instagram started, Instagram might finish, something else might start. There'll always be some kind of social media. So the best thing to do is adapt yourself to the modern world, right? But adapt yourself in a way that you're going to be successful with these tools. And they can be tools if you can use them in the right way. So I'm going to leave it there. Thanks everyone for listening. Maybe I'll leave you with one challenge, okay? So I want you to think about any time this week between this podcast episode and the next podcast episode, I want you to catch yourself when you're comparing yourself to anyone else. Just catch that thought. Pause right there and reframe it. Reframe it as a way of motivating you. And when you've done that, write down one thing you're proud of that you've done yourself. So you catch that comparison thought, you reframe that comparison thought, and you write down something you're proud of. So I hope you take up the challenge. If you've enjoyed what you listened to, click like and subscribe to this channel. Share this channel with as many people as you can so I can get my message across to more people. Thanks for listening, and see you all next time.